The courtroom erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. And Daniel Morgan, Manhattan's most expensive criminal defense attorney, stood motionless as the jury foreman's words echoed in his mind. Not guilty. The price of victory. Marcus Dalton walked free. A man accused of murdering two people. A man Daniel had defended brilliantly, ruthlessly, finding every technicality, exploiting every procedural error, shredding every witness until reasonable doubt wasn't just established, it was guaranteed. This was Daniel's specialty, his gift, his $2,000 per hour talent for turning the guilty into the vindicated, the criminal into the victim of prosecutorial overreach. At 42, he'd never lost a case, never. He should have felt triumphant. Instead, as Marcus Dalton shook his hand with a smile that never reached his cold eyes, Daniel felt something he'd trained himself to ignore for 20 years. Doubt. "You're a miracle worker, counselor," Marcus whispered, his breath smelling of expensive cologne and something darker. "I won't forget this." That sounded less like gratitude and more like a threat. Daniel pushed the thought away, collected his 7-figure fee, and went home to his minimalist apartment overlooking Central Park. 33 floors above the city, soundproofed, climate-controlled, sterile. Perfect isolation. He poured himself 18-year-old scotch and stood at the window, watching the city lights blur into golden streaks. Another victory. Another client who would never see the inside of a prison cell, regardless of what they'd actually done. "You're a hired gun," his ex-wife had told him during the divorce 5 years ago. "You don't care about right or wrong anymore, just winning." She'd been correct. Daniel had stopped caring about truth somewhere around his 100th case when he'd realized that truth was subjective, justice was negotiable, and the only thing that mattered in a courtroom was who told the better story. He'd become exceptional at storytelling. He drained his glass and went to bed, unaware that in 8 hours, someone would knock on his door and force him to confront every choice he'd ever made. The knocking started at 6 a.m., not the polite tap of his doorman, not the confident knock of a colleague. This was desperate, erratic, the sound of someone using both fists, pounding like their life depended on it. Daniel grabbed his phone, ready to call security, when a child's voice cut through the door. "Mr. Morgan, please, I know you're in there. Please open the door." He froze. A child? Against every instinct of self-preservation, Daniel opened the door. A little girl stood in the hallway, 8 years old, maybe 9, with tangled blonde hair and clothes that looked like she'd been sleeping in them for days. Her face was streaked with tears and dirt, but it was her eyes that stopped him. Gray eyes filled with a fury so intense it seemed impossible for a child to contain. "You killed my mother," she said. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. "What? You're Daniel Morgan. You got Marcus Dalton out of jail 3 weeks ago. 2 days after he walked free, he came to our apartment. He killed my mom because she testified against him in the first trial. Now he's looking for me, and you're the only person who can stop him." Daniel's mind raced. Marcus Dalton, the case. There had been a witness, a woman who claimed to see him at the murder scene. Daniel had destroyed her credibility on the stand, revealing past drug use, inconsistencies in her timeline, until the jury dismissed her entirely. "Your mother was Sarah Chen," he said slowly. The girl nodded. "I'm Grace.
Grace Chen and Marcus Dalton murdered my mother in front of me. He told me it was your fault she had to die, that if you hadn't made everyone think she was a liar, he would have stayed in prison where he belonged. Then he said I was next, that I was a loose end. She pulled up her sleeve, revealing bruises, fresh ones. I've been hiding for 2 days, in the subway, in the park, but he has people looking for me. I saw them yesterday. They almost caught me. Her voice finally cracked. Everyone says you're the best lawyer in New York. Everyone says you can save anyone. So I came here because I need you to save me, not from the law, from the man you saved from it. Daniel felt like the floor had dropped away beneath him. He'd spent 20 years winning cases without thinking about the aftermath. The clients he freed went back into the world, and what they did afterward wasn't his problem. He was just their attorney, not their moral guardian. But now, the aftermath was standing in his doorway, 8 years old and terrified, asking him to fix what he'd broken. "Come inside," he heard himself say. Grace stepped into the apartment cautiously, like an animal entering a trap. She clutched a small backpack, the kind children took to school, and her eyes darted around the space, cataloging exits, threats, possibilities. "When did you last eat?" Daniel asked. "I don't know. Yesterday morning, I had half a bagel someone left on a bench." He gestured toward his kitchen. "Sit, I'll make you something." While scrambling eggs, something he rarely did for himself, Daniel called his office. "Clear my schedule for today. Family emergency." His assistant knew better than to ask questions. Grace ate with the focused intensity of someone who'd gone too long without food. Daniel watched her, seeing not a client's daughter, but a consequence, a living, breathing result of his professional success. "Tell me everything," he said when she'd finished. Grace set down her fork. Mom testified against Marcus because she was working night shift at the bodega where one of his murders happened. She saw him leave covered in blood, but you made everyone think she was crazy, drug addict, unreliable witness. She had a history of getting clean, Grace interrupted fiercely. She'd been sober for 4 years, but you found her old records, made it sound like she was high that night. She wasn't. She was working double shifts to pay for my school, to give me a better life. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. After Marcus walked free, Mom was terrified. She knew he'd come for her. She called the police, but they said there was nothing they could do unless he actually did something. So we waited. We were careful. We changed our routine, looked over our shoulders constantly. But he found us anyway, 2 nights ago. He kicked in our door while I was doing homework. Mom told me to hide in the closet. I heard everything. Her begging, him laughing, then silence. When I came out, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. Marcus saw me, but before he could grab me, our neighbor knocked on the door, probably heard the noise.
Marcus ran, but before he left, he looked at me and said, "You're next, little witness, just like your lying mother." "Why come to me?" Daniel asked, though he already knew. "Why not the police?" "I did go to the police. They said they'd investigate, but it takes time. They need evidence. They can't just arrest someone based on a child's accusation, especially when that someone was already found not guilty of murder. They told me I'd be safer in foster care while they looked into it." Grace's eyes blazed. "But I don't need foster care. I need Marcus Dalton in prison, and you're the only person who's ever beaten him. You got him out, you can put him back in." "That's not how it works." "Then make it work." She slammed her small fist on the table. "You're supposed to be brilliant. Everyone says so. The lawyer who never loses. So stop losing and help me." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. She was right.
He was brilliant. He'd spent 2 decades perfecting the art of legal warfare. He knew every loophole, every strategy, every psychological manipulation that could sway a jury. He just never used those skills for anything resembling justice. "If I help you," Daniel said slowly, "I'll be going up against one of my former clients. I could be disbarred, my reputation destroyed, everything I've built gone." Grace looked at him with eyes far too old for her face. "My mom is gone. Everything she built, me, our life together is destroyed, and it's because you chose money over truth. So maybe it's time you chose something else." Daniel made 3 calls. First, to his most trusted private investigator. "I need everything on Marcus Dalton, where he is, who he's working with, every place he's been since his release, and I need it yesterday." Second, to a prosecutor he'd humiliated in court years ago. "Linda, this is Daniel Morgan. Don't hang up. I have information about an active threat, and I need your help." Third, to his bank. "Transfer $50,000 to this account number. Personal expense." Grace watched him work with cautious hope. "What's the money for?" "Safe house, security, resources. If I'm doing this, I'm doing it right." "You really going to help me?" Daniel looked at her, this small girl who'd lost everything because he'd been too good at his job, and felt the weight of 20 years of moral compromise pressing down on him. "I'm going to do more than help you," he said quietly. "I'm going to make sure Marcus Dalton faces justice, the kind he should have faced the first time." Within 3 hours, Daniel's investigator called back. "You're not going to like this. Dalton's been busy since his release. 2 more murders that match his pattern, both witnesses from other cases, both unsolved. And here's the interesting part. He's been flashing cash, a lot of it." "Where's he getting the money?" "That's the question. My contact in organized crime says Dalton's been hired as a cleaner, someone who eliminates problematic witnesses for the mob. Your trial made him famous in certain circles, proof that even with witnesses, you can walk free if you have the right lawyer." Daniel's blood ran cold. "I created a monster." "You created a profitable business model," the investigator corrected grimly. "And Grace Chen is on his list. I've confirmed he's got people looking for her. You need to move her, now." Daniel looked at Grace, who'd fallen asleep on his couch, exhausted beyond endurance. This small girl who'd climbed to his apartment, knocked on his door, and asked the man responsible for her mother's death to save her. She should hate him, should want revenge. Instead, she'd offered him redemption. "Tell me where he'll be tonight." The warehouse district at midnight looked like something from a noir film, all shadows and steam, danger hiding in every corner. Daniel wore a wire, coordinated with Detective Linda Morrison, the prosecutor he'd humiliated in court years ago, in the Rodriguez case. "This is insane," Linda whispered through the earpiece. "You're not a cop. If Dalton even suspects—" "He won't. He trusts me. I'm the miracle worker who set him free." Daniel had texted Marcus earlier. "Need to discuss ongoing legal concerns, potential exposure. Meet tonight?" Marcus had responded immediately. "Warehouse on Pier 19, midnight. Come alone." Now Daniel stood outside the rusted door, every instinct screaming at him to run. He was a lawyer, not a hero. His weapons were words, not courage. But behind him, in a safe house across the city, Grace Chen was waiting to see if the man who destroyed her life could find the strength to repair it. Daniel knocked. The door opened, revealing Marcus Dalton's scarred face and cold smile. "Counselor, didn't expect to see you in this neighborhood." "We need to talk about your recent activities." Marcus's smile widened. "Come in, let's talk." Inside, the warehouse was cavernous and dark. Marcus led Daniel to a makeshift office, stolen furniture, harsh fluorescent lights, the inconceivable signs of criminal operations. "Drink?" Marcus offered, pouring expensive bourbon. No thanks, this is business. Everything's business with you, isn't it? That's why you're the best. No messy emotions, just strategy. I've heard rumors, intelligently, Daniel said, that you've been taking on certain eliminations, witnesses. Marcus laughed. Is that why you're here? Worried I'll tarnish your perfect record? Don't worry, counselor. Every person I've dealt with deserved it. Liars, snitches, people who couldn't keep their mouths shut. People like Sarah Chen. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marcus's expression didn't change, but his eyes went flat and deadly. Interesting name to bring up. You knew that woman? I destroyed her on the stand, made the jury think she was unstable, unreliable. It was brilliant work. It was masterful. But you're wondering if she was telling the truth, aren't you? If maybe you helped a guilty man go free. Daniel forced himself to maintain eye contact. Did you kill her?
Why would I tell you if I did? Attorney-client privilege is over. Because you're proud of it, Daniel said softly. You want someone to know how clever you've been, how untouchable. Marcus's smile returned, sharp as a blade. You know what? You're right. I am proud. Sarah Chen testified against me, nearly cost me my life. So when I got out, I visited her, made sure she understood the price of lying. She wasn't lying. No, Marcus agreed. She wasn't. But you made 12 people believe she was. That's the beauty of the system, counselor. Truth doesn't matter, only persuasion. You taught me that. Daniel felt sick. And her daughter? Little loose end. She saw me that night. Can't have witnesses walking around, can we? Especially not after you trained me so well on how to eliminate their credibility. Though kids are tricky, juries love children. Better to just remove the problem. Where is she? Marcus shrugged. Ran. Been looking for 2 days. But she'll surface. Kids always do. And when she does, she's in federal protective custody. Turned herself in yesterday. Already gave a full statement. Marcus's hand moved toward his waistband. You're lying. Am I? I'm her attorney. She contacted me for help. Did exactly what I told her to. Went straight to the FBI with everything she knew. They're building a case right now. Multiple murders, witness intimidation, organized crime connections. Then why are you here? Because I wanted to give you a chance. Surrender peacefully. Cooperate. Give up your employers. You might get life instead of death penalty. Marcus pulled out a gun. Or, he said conversationally, I could just kill the lawyer who knows too much. 50 seconds. That's how long Detective Morrison said it would take to breach the building once Daniel gave the signal. He just had to stay alive for 50 seconds. Killing me won't help you, Daniel said, forcing his voice to remain steady. I've already given my statement to the DA. Grace has already testified. The wire I'm wearing is already transmitting to 6 different federal agents positioned outside this building. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Bluffing. Am I? You want to bet your life on it? For 5 eternal seconds, they stared at each other. The criminal and the lawyer who'd freed him, now facing the consequences of their choices. Then Marcus smiled. You know what's funny? I actually like you, Morgan. You're just like me. We both do whatever it takes to win. Morality is for losers. Rules are for chumps. The only thing that matters is being smarter than everyone else. No, Daniel said quietly. That's where you're wrong. I was like you. I thought winning was everything. But a little girl knocked on my door this morning and showed me that some victories aren't worth the price. Touching. Die philosophical. Marcus raised the gun. Daniel closed his eyes, thinking of Grace, hoping she'd forgive him for not being brave enough, fast enough,
Good enough. The warehouse exploded with sound. "Federal agents, drop your weapon!" What happened next occurred in fragmented snapshots. Marcus spinning toward the door, gunfire, Daniel hitting the floor, shouts, smoke grenades, chaos. When the dust settled, Marcus Dalton lay on the ground, wounded but alive, surrounded by armed agents. And Daniel Morgan, Manhattan's most expensive criminal defense attorney, sat with his back against the wall, trembling and alive. Detective Linda Morrison appeared, pulling him to his feet. "You did good, counselor. Really good. Is it enough? Did we get him?" Murder confession on tape, assault with deadly weapon, attempted murder of an officer of the court. Yeah, we got him. He's never walking free again. Daniel felt something break open inside him. Relief, horror, guilt, and a tiny, fragile seed of redemption. "I need to see Grace." The safe house was a modest apartment in Queens, guarded by 2 armed officers. Grace sat on a sofa, watching the door, her backpack clutched in her lap like she still didn't believe she was safe. When Daniel walked in, her face transformed. "You're alive!" She ran to him, and Daniel, who hadn't hugged anyone in years, who trained himself to view emotion as weakness, caught her and held on like she was a life raft in a drowning sea. "I'm alive, and Marcus Dalton is in custody. He confessed everything on tape. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." Grace pulled back, searching his face. "Really? It's really over?" "It's over." She started to cry, not tears of sadness but of release, the kind that come when you've been holding terror inside for so long that you've forgotten what safety feels like. Daniel held her while she sobbed and felt his own tears falling. For Sarah Chen, whom he'd destroyed on the stand. For every defendant he'd freed without questioning their guilt. For 20 years of victories that had cost other people everything. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to your mother. For making everyone think she was lying. For setting the man who killed her free." "But you caught him. You stopped him from hurting anyone else. You chose different." "Too late," Daniel said bitterly. "Your mother is still gone. All because I—" "No," Grace pulled back, her gray eyes fierce. "Marcus Dalton killed my mother. Not you. But you get to choose what happens next. You can keep being the lawyer who helps bad people escape, or you can be the lawyer who stops them. You can keep choosing money, or you can choose truth." From the mouth of children comes wisdom that adults spend lifetimes avoiding. 3 months later, Daniel Morgan stood before the New York State Bar Association, facing disbarment proceedings for violating attorney-client privilege and engaging in unauthorized law enforcement activity. "You broke every rule," the panel chair said sternly, "compromised your client's trust, worked against someone you previously represented. These are serious ethical violations." "I know," Daniel replied.
And I accept full responsibility. What I did was legally questionable, but it was morally necessary. Marcus Dalton was hunting an 8-year-old child. I had information that could stop him. Should I have stayed silent and let him kill her because of ethical technicalities? "The law exists for a reason," another panelist argued. If every attorney decided they could violate privilege based on personal moral judgment, then maybe we'd have fewer monsters walking free, Daniel interrupted. I spent 20 years defending people I knew were guilty, hiding behind everyone deserves a defense while ignoring what they do once I won their freedom. I was complicit, not legally, but morally, and I'm done with it. The room fell silent. "If you disbar me," Daniel continued, "I'll accept it. But I won't apologize for saving Grace Chen's life, and I won't go back to being the lawyer who values victory over justice." The panel deliberated for 2 hours. Finally, they returned. "We find that while your actions were highly irregular," the chair announced, "the extenuating circumstances, imminent threat to a child's life,
active confession to multiple murders justify a lesser penalty. You are hereby suspended from practice for 6 months. Use that time to reflect on how to serve justice within the bounds of ethical practice. Daniel nodded. 6 months. He had expected worse. As he left the hearing, Grace was waiting outside with her grandmother, Sarah's mother, who'd taken her in after the tragedy. "What happened?" Grace asked anxiously. "I'm suspended for 6 months, but I can practice again after that." "What will you do?" Daniel knelt down to her level. "I'm going to start over, build a different kind of practice, one that represents victims instead of victimizers, one that uses all my skills to protect people instead of endangering them." "Like a good guy lawyer?" Grace asked hopefully. "Exactly like that." 6 months became a transformation period. Daniel liquidated his luxury apartment, donating most of his savings to organizations supporting crime victims. He spent his suspension volunteering at legal aid clinics, learning to see the system from the other side. And he wrote a book, The Price of Victory: Confessions of a Defense Attorney. It detailed his cases, his tactics, his evolution from idealistic law student to amoral hired gun to someone trying to find redemption. The book became a bestseller, not because readers enjoyed the stories, but because they were horrified by them. Daniel exposed the legal loopholes, the manipulation techniques, the way wealthy criminals bought freedom while poor defendants languished in prison. Grace wrote the foreword. This is the story of a man who helped a murderer go free, then helped catch him. It's about choosing to be better than you were yesterday, about how it's never too late to stand on the right side. When Daniel's suspension ended, he reopened his practice with a new focus: the Morgan Justice Project. Free legal representation for victims of violent crime, funded entirely by his past earnings. His first client was a mother whose son had been killed by a drunk driver, a driver who'd been defended brilliantly by one of Daniel's former colleagues and received a minimal sentence. "I can't promise I'll win, but I promise I'll fight with everything I have. No tricks, no manipulations, just the truth presented as powerfully as I know how." They won. The appeals court overturned the lenient sentence, and the drunk driver received the maximum penalty. It was Daniel's first victory in the new chapter of his career. It felt completely different.
5 years later, the Morgan Justice Project operated in 12 states. Daniel had trained a team of attorneys in ethical advocacy, using their skills to protect victims rather than free perpetrators. They'd won landmark cases, changed laws, and given voice to people the system had failed. Grace, now 13, testified before Congress about the impact of legal manipulation on victim families. She was poised, articulate, fierce, her mother's daughter in every way that mattered. "The question isn't whether guilty people deserve defense," she told the assembled senators. "It's whether lawyers should use every trick to free people they know committed terrible crimes." My mother told the truth. A brilliant lawyer made everyone think she lied. That lawyer chose victory over justice, and my mother paid with her life. She paused, finding Daniel in the crowd. But that same lawyer chose differently the second time. He risked everything to stop the man he'd freed. He showed me that people can change, that past mistakes don't define your future, your next choice does. The testimony led to new ethical guidelines for criminal defense, limitations on attacking victim credibility, mandatory disclosure of certain evidence, protections for vulnerable witnesses. The legal community was divided. Some called it necessary reform, others called it an attack on due process. Daniel didn't care. He'd spent too many years caring about professional reputation while ignoring human cost. Now he measured success differently. On the 10th anniversary of Sarah Chen's murder, Daniel and Grace visited her grave together. Grace placed flowers, lilies, her mother's favorite, while Daniel stood back respectfully. "She would have forgiven you," Grace said softly. "Mom believed people could change. She had been an addict and got clean. She knew about second chances." "I don't deserve forgiveness," Daniel replied. "I helped her killer walk free. You also put him away forever. You stopped him from killing anyone else. You changed your whole life because of what happened to her." Grace turned to face him. "Mom used to say that the person you were doesn't matter as much as the person you choose to become. You chose to become someone who protects people like her. That matters." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I wish I'd made that choice before she died." "Me too, but we can't change the past. We can only build a better future." Grace took his hand. "And that's what we're doing. Together." Over the past 5 years, Grace had become like a daughter to him, not replacing her mother, never that, but filling a void in Daniel's life he hadn't known existed. He'd attended her school plays, helped with homework, taught her to think critically and fight justly. In saving her life, he'd given him a reason to live better. "Thank you," Daniel said quietly, "for knocking on my door that morning, for giving me a chance to choose differently. Thank you for answering, for being brave enough to face what you'd done wrong and try to make it right." They stood together in the cemetery, two survivors of different kinds of violence, bound together by tragedy and transformation. 20 years after the knock, Daniel Morgan, now 62, stood before a packed auditorium at Harvard Law School, his alma mater, where he'd once learned to value winning above all else. "I was the best criminal defense attorney in New York. I never lost, never, and I thought that made me successful." He clicked to a photo of Grace's mother. Her name was Sarah Chen. She witnessed a murder, told the truth, and I destroyed her credibility so effectively that the murderer walked free and killed her 2 weeks later. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. "I was complicit in her death. Not legally, I broke no laws, but morally, I helped create the conditions that led to her murder, and for years, I told myself that wasn't my problem. Everyone deserves a defense, right? I was just doing my job." Another click. 8-year-old Grace at his door, desperate and terrified. "This is Grace Chen, Sarah's daughter. She knocked on my door and asked me to fix what I'd broken, to stop the monster I'd unleashed. And in that moment, I had a choice: maintain my ethical distance and let another person die, or violate every professional rule and try to save her. I chose to save her. I violated attorney-client privilege. I worked with prosecutors against my former client. I did things that nearly got me disbarred, and I'd do it all again." He looked out at the sea of young, ambitious faces. "You're going to be lawyers. Some of you will defend people you know are guilty. That's part of the system. But I'm here to tell you, there are lines you shouldn't cross, truths you shouldn't suppress, victims you shouldn't destroy just to win. The question isn't whether you can win using every available tactic. The question is whether you should. Whether your professional victory is worth the human cost. Whether being the best lawyer matters more than being a good person." Grace, now 28 and a prosecutor herself, joined him on stage. "I'm the girl in that photo, the one who asked a stranger for help when everyone else turned away. Daniel Morgan could have closed his door, could have called the police and washed his hands of responsibility. But he didn't. He chose to care, to act, to risk everything for someone he'd already failed once. That's the lawyer I want you to become. Not the one who wins at any cost, but the one who wins the right way. Who uses brilliant legal minds to serve justice, not subvert it. Who remembers that every case involves real people
with real lives that hang in the balance. The applause that followed was thunderous. That night, Daniel and Grace had dinner together, a ritual they'd maintained for 20 years, every Tuesday at the same quiet restaurant. "The students asked good questions," Grace said. "One wanted to know if you regret your entire early career." "What did you tell them?" "That regret is only useful if it changes your future. That you spent 20 years trying to balance the scales for the damage you did." She smiled. "That you're proof that people can choose to be better." Daniel set down his wine glass. "I've been thinking about retirement. The project is in good hands. Maybe it's time to step back." "And do what?" "Teach, write, spend time with my family. You and your kids. The life I nearly missed out on by refusing to care about anyone." Grace reached across the table, taking his hand. "You're a good man, Daniel. Not perfect, none of us are, but good. You made terrible choices and then spent decades making better ones. That counts for something." "Does it count enough?" "For Mom? Yes. She believed in redemption. She'd be proud of what you became. I'm proud of you. You're the father I needed after I lost her. You chose me when you didn't have to. That means everything." Daniel Morgan died at 73, surrounded by family, Grace, her husband, their 3 children, and the dozens of staff and clients from the Justice Project who'd become his extended family. His obituary read, "Former defense attorney turned victims advocate, known for the Morgan Justice Project, which provided free legal representation to thousands of crime victims. Remembered for choosing courage over comfort, justice over victory." But the words that mattered most were engraved on his headstone, chosen by Grace. He answered the knock. Because 20 years earlier, a desperate child had knocked on a stranger's door, asking the man who'd failed her mother to save her. And Daniel Morgan had made the choice that defined the rest of his life: to care more than was convenient, to risk more than was safe, to become more than he'd been. The Morgan Justice Project continues today, operating in 32 states, employing over 200 attorneys, serving thousands of victims annually. Grace Chen Morgan serves as its director, carrying on the legacy born from tragedy. And sometimes, late at night, she tells your children the story of how her grandfather was once a man who helped the wrong people for the wrong reasons, until one knock changed everything. Remember, she always ends the story, we all have moments where someone knocks on our door. Moments where we can choose comfort or courage. Grandfather chose courage, and that choice rippled forward through generations. What if no one knocks on our door? Then you knock on theirs, she replies softly. You be the one who asks for help, who offers help, who refuses to accept that bad things happen and there's nothing we can do about them. You be the knock that changes someone's life.